moment I first drove a car, or at least from the moment I got my first speeding ticket, probably more accurately, I wondered what it would be like to drive on the autobahn in Germany with no speed limits, like James Bond in a Jag XKE or an Aston Martin DB5 with right-hand steer. And then, I was young, and when you're young, you're always outraged by everything, and you've always got a little bit of a libertarian streak in you. And I wondered, how come in a supposedly free country, we have speed limits? We should be allowed to drive as fast as we want to, but particularly out west. And then a few years later, as a trucking journalist, I got to go to Germany, and I got to drive on the autobahn, and I realized really fast there is no way in hell no speed limits would ever work here in the United States. Hey everyone, I'm Jack Roberts. Welcome to another edition of Off Duty Driver. It's your professional driver's channel for news, fun, information. And today we're going to have a little fun. We're going to talk about driving in Germany. Have you ever wished that you could drive as fast as you want to without having to worry about getting a speeding ticket? I think that's a pretty common sentiment for most Americans, particularly people my age, Generation X, who learned to drive when the federal speed limit on the interstate highways was a ridiculous 55 miles per hour. I tended to get about a speeding ticket a year back in those days. But there are no speed limits on rural sections of Germany's famous autobahn highways. And I've always dreamed of getting out on the roads, like I said, in an Aston Martin, a BMW, a high-powered Mercedes-Benz, and just hauling ass to my heart's content, tearing across the European continent, waving merrily at the Polizei as I blasted past them. I figured it'd be a lot of fun. And when I actually drove on the Autobahn, I realized real fast it would never work here. It would be mass carnage. There would just be ambulances everywhere. It would be a disaster. And, to explain why I think that, let's back up a little bit. The Autobahn is Germany's version of our interstate highways. They're designed from the moment they're built for high-speed driving. They have much longer curves than we do, for example. Every rural section of the Autobahn is always 6 lanes wide. Trucks in Germany are limited 55 miles per hour top speed on the Autobahn, period. That is not negotiable. They're also limited to the 2 far right lanes on the highway. They are supposed to remain in the far right lane when they're just cruising along at 55 miles an hour again. The middle lane is for passing. And it's sort of a mirror effect if you're in a passenger car. Passenger cars use the middle lane for cruising, and you only ever pull over into the far left lane to pass another vehicle. As soon as you pass that vehicle, you immediately pull back over in the middle lane. There are no exceptions to that rule. And it is absolutely verboten to pass on the right on the Autobahns. You just do not do it. While we're talking about trucking, because this is a channel for off-duty truck drivers, there's an interesting thing about Europe that will probably piss a bunch of you off. And that is, during most of the year, all heavy trucks must be off the road in Germany on Sundays and holidays. No exceptions. The ban begins at midnight on Sunday and it runs until 10 p.m. Sunday night. During the summer months, generally July through August, that mandatory downtime is extended from 7 a.m. on Saturday mornings until 10 p.m. on Sunday. Although if I read the rules right, there might be a 4-hour window from like 8 o'clock to midnight that you could run, or maybe 2 hours, but it's not much. It's not even worth cranking the truck up. And that's why I'm told that there are some pretty awesome barbecues, cookouts, and outdoor parties that break out at truck stops and rest areas all over Germany on the weekends in the summer. Drivers from all over Europe pull over. They start cooking out, grilling, drinking some good German beer, and just generally waiting on the go signal so they can get back to work once the weekend is over. But the bottom line there's 0 trucks on the road on a lot of weekends in Germany. And while that sucks if you're a professional driver who just like to finish the job and your trip and get back home, it's a pretty awesome thing if you're in a Porsche 911 and feel like seeing what it'll do out on the Autobahn without having to deal with truck traffic. I think the other differentiating point here is that the Germans have a very intensive driver training program, kind of puts ours to makes a mockery of ours. Young kids first learn to drive in town, and their first issued driver's license only allows them to drive on non-highway public roads, basically in town, around the town. You have to earn a separate, far more advanced driver's license before you're allowed to drive on the Autobahn. And because of this really strict driver licensing program, in addition to their national character and culture too, most likely, the Germans are extremely disciplined drivers. It is amazing to watch them on the roads. You don't see them munching on a cheeseburger, putting on makeup, or looking at their cell phones or anything like that. And they absolutely obey all traffic laws and signs as soon as they see them. I'll give you an example. When an American sees a speed limit sign, say telling them to reduce speed from say 65 to 45, I'm guilty of this. Most of us tend to take our foot off the gas and sort of slowly cruise down to the new speed limit. If you think there's a cop around, maybe you tap the brake pedal a little bit. That ain't how it is in Germany, folks. When they see a new speed limit sign, they get on the brakes hard. Like they'll pitch you forward in the seatbelt. If it goes from no speed limit down to say 120 kilometers an hour or down to 90 or 80, they go to that speed right then and there. They're not playing around. It's that combination of discipline and training, and I think a heightened sense of just the general public good is why I don't think the no speed limits thing would ever work here in the States. When you're behind the wheel on the autobahn, just from personal experience, it takes a great deal of concentration, focus, discipline to drive at those speeds. I'm talking over 100 miles an hour for hours on end, miles on end. There's no scratching your nose. There's no playing around with the radio. There's no oohing and awing at the really pretty castle on the hill at those speeds. You absolutely have to be focused on the road and the traffic rules at all times. You have to look out much, much farther ahead of the vehicle you're driving and behind it as well. You've got to keep track of the traffic. You come up on slower moving vehicles at an astonishing closure rate. And even if you're going 120 miles an hour, I think the most I ever did, I had a terrible car on the internet. It was a rental. It was a Fiat Doblo. If you look it up, you'll see not exactly a BMW or a Ferrari. I think the best that thing would do is like 120 miles an hour flat out. And even at that speed in the left lane, cars come up behind you seemingly out of nowhere. One minute you check your mirror, you're going to pass, nothing's behind you. And the next thing you know, there's a BMW 700 series right on your back bumper, flashing his high beams at you to get the hell out of the left lane. And you cannot let your attention lapse for even a second at those speeds. You can't ignore the rules of the road. And don't even get me started on autobahn driving in the rain. It is stressful beyond belief. Even on a sunny day, it's an incredibly draining experience. I've only driven on the Autobahn a handful of times, so I have no doubt that it gets easier the more you do it. But still, the experience, while exhilarating in many ways, left me convinced that no speed limits would be a horrible, horrible idea here in the U.S. Americans are just too independent, I guess. In many ways, I think it's a good thing. It's certainly a big part of why America is America. It's a big part of our culture. But when it comes to driving at speeds over 100 miles an hour on public roads, independence is not a virtue. In fact, not following the rules can get you killed and a lot of other people killed fast. So what do you think? Have you ever had the chance to drive on the Autobahn? Maybe you were in the Army. Did you find it as stressful an experience as I did? That's kind of a mouthful to say. Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, I'm Jack Roberts with Off Duty Driver. Until the next time, hold them in the road.